Hey guys, my name is Mara Sullivan. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're talking about Estelle Getty, aka Sophia Petrillo, aka one of the best actresses of all time. She's one of the fabulous ladies who put the gold in golden, and I'm so excited to talk about her. This video is a video in a whole series I'm doing here on my channel called my 60 Plus Golden Series. It is a whole series on my favorite women over 60. And of course, I can't talk about my favorite women over 60 without talking about my favorite women over 60, the Golden Girls. I still watch that show every single day. To me, these ladies are very much alive. And so if I refer to Estelle in the present tense, just know I'm fully aware that she unfortunately is no longer with us, but I still watch the show every day. So to me, she's alive and well, okay? Like, I love this cast. I love these women so, so much. I was debating on whether or not I wanted to do um, women, like I wanted to include women who are no longer here as a part of this series, but I just cannot talk about my favorite women over 60 without talking about the Golden Girls. But unfortunately, all of them have transitioned, but I had to include them in this series because they are my legit favorite women over 60. This cast is so incredible, so inspiring, and I am absolutely obsessed with Elle Getty's story. This whole series is inspired by people in my own life, referring to me pretty often as a grandma. I have a few grandma-like ways, grandma-like traits. And if you are also a Gen Z grandma like I am, I always say I'm 80% grandma, 20% Gen Z. I'm 26 years old, but I'm actually 80 on the inside. Like, I have such an old soul. And so if this is your vibe, I'm also such a nerd. I am obsessed with people's stories. It is my absolute favorite hobby to study the people whose lives I love and admire. I can't just be a fan of someone. I need to know every single thing about them. I need to know as much as I can about them. And so it's just fun to have this platform to nerd out and to do these little deep dives and just get so much inspiration and share so much wisdom that I've learned from studying people's lives and these, just incredible women, especially. And yeah, let's just get into Estelle. So, Estelle Getty has an incredible story. The number one takeaway that I learned from Estelle Getty's life is actually something that I talk about a lot throughout my content, and that is you have to stick with something long enough to make it work, to see it through. And also, when you love something, you're going to make it happen no matter what. Estelle Getty did not find major success until later in life. And, she had a very discouraging ride to the top, if you will, but she never gave up on acting. She never gave up on her dream. She's like the true definition of like take a licking and keep on ticking. She is from New York City, and even though her parents are the ones, like her dad is the one who exposed her to the theater, her parents were not supportive of her getting into acting. They didn't see it as a sustainable career path. Most people don't when you get into the arts, especially back then during that time. It was very much more serious. Women were home a lot of the time. And so getting a job was abnormal, but then getting a job in entertainment was even more shunned upon back then. But she did not let that stop her. She did end up getting married, had a family, and did have a regular job. She worked as a secretary for over 20 years. And during that time, she also pursued acting. So she still stayed in the theater. Like I said, they were living in New York City. She describes her life as being so frantic during that time because she was so busy. She was raising her boys. She would take them obviously to school during the day. Then she would work as a secretary throughout her day. She would go to auditions for plays on her lunch breaks, which I just find that's really commitment. That is dedication. That is true. When you want to make something happen, you're going to find a way to do it no matter what. And so, yeah, she would go to lunch, go to auditions on her lunch breaks, and then she would get off work, get her kids from school, do the whole nighttime routine, put her kids to bed. And once she put her kids to bed, she would go to the theater and either perform for the plays, have rehearsal for the plays that she was in. But she was always acting. Like, she never stopped pursuing her dream of acting. She fell in love with the theater, and she was very committed to it, and she knew that it was what she wanted to do. And she kept doing it no matter what. And so she stayed in acting throughout her, most of her life. And she talks about how she was able to to commit more time to acting once she raised her kids, once they got older. They left home, and so she was able to dedicate more time. But she says by that time, again, she had already been doing the work and pursuing your dream thing at the same time. And, by then she was tired. And she is honest about saying that she wanted to give up because she was doing it at that point for over 20 years and had not had a huge breakthrough. She hadn't been discovered or had her big like breakout role. And so she was ready to give up. And, it's just such a testament to how you never know. Like, it's always the moment when you want to give up that everything seems to take off. Like, I feel like so many people have had those moments in life where as soon as you're ready to quit, just like when it comes to relationships, they say like once you stop looking is when your person finds you. It's kind of the same thing with most other things in life. Like, once you kind of get to the point where you're like, I'm done, is when the universe, God, whoever decides to like be like, no, like wait, just hold on here. Like, here you go. And it's so weird, and it's just part of life where it's like you have to get to your breaking point sometimes in order for something to work and to take off. But anyway, as soon as she said that she was ready to give up is when she ended up getting in the incredible play called what was it called? Torch Trilogy. I think it was called the Torch Song Trilogy is the name of it. And that ended up leading her to Hollywood, which ended up leading her to Golden Girls. But I need to talk about the Torch Song Trilogy because Estelle Getty, a huge part of her life, went towards support for the LGBTQ plus community, went towards, advocating for gay rights and AIDS awareness. That was a huge, significant part of her life. Again, she had been in the theater for most of her life. And so she was around everyone. She was around all kinds of people. And the Torch Song Trilogy in particular was a very controversial play, and she mastered that role. And it was just, she did such an unforgettable performance that it ended up leading to the Golden Girls. But before that, she was known as a phenomenal actress in theater from that play specifically. Of course, she, have been in plays up until that point for 20 plus years, but that play in particular, it was so controversial. It talked about, I want to watch it because I haven't seen it. I think it actually got turned into a film as well, but it touched on homosexuality. I believe they're like drag queens. It talked about cross-dressing. It just addressed so many issues. AIDS. It addressed so many issues and things that people were uncomfortable talking with. One of her actor friends on that film or in that play ended up, saying in one of her documentaries that he would watch people come into the theater with, young people come in with their parents and not even be able to speak to each other, not be able to look at each other because their parents did not agree with their lifestyle and with their choices. And he said that he would watch them leave the theater, those same people leave the theater with their arms around each other and embracing and hugging because, in large part, because of Estelle Getty's performance in that play. She was a mom, and she just made that play, she made the character what it was supposed to be. It ended up being such an incredible story, an incredible play. It changed so many people's lives. Her character specifically changed so many people's lives. And it's so funny because when he talked about it, he said that she was only in the third act of the play, but the role was so significant and she played the role so well that she ended up being the star of the entire show, and she wasn't even in the show for most of it. And that just goes to show how much of a true actress she was. And the same thing with Golden Girls, because Sophia Petrillo wasn't even supposed to be a regular character on the show. She wasn't supposed to be in every single episode. And once she got there, and once the producers saw how incredible she was, they had to keep her on the show, and she became a main character. So she just has these moments where she thinks she's doing one thing, or it's not, she thinks that it's not significant, and then it ends up being absolutely incredible. So it's just so encouraging and so inspiring when deep down that you're supposed to be doing something, make it happen no matter what. She ended up, like I said, having huge success in the Torch Song Trilogy play. And when that show had a run in LA, they did a few shows in LA because they were on tour. When they were in LA is when she ended up meeting the Hollywood producers who asked her to come audition for Golden Girls. And before I get into that, she did lose so many friends to the AIDS crisis. And it was so sweet. She talked about one of her cast members in one of her shows, because back then AIDS was so new, no one really knew what was going on at the time. And she talked about how she used to bring him like homemade food every single day, like chicken noodle soup and roast chicken and so many things, because in her mind, and that's how like most moms like think, she was like, a home cooked meal can cure anything. But unfortunately, he did end up getting worse and passing away. She had a nephew that she lost, a part of her own family who she ended up losing to AIDS. And so, like I said, so much of her life's work went to supporting that community. And of course, once she got more famous and gained more popularity, she did so much work, and she used her fame and her fortune to raise AIDS awareness and to support the LGBTQ plus community as much as she could during her life. And even after her life, I'm pretty sure like some of her estate went to that as well. But she's just so incredible. But she did lose so many dear friends during that time. And I just wanted to talk about that because I think that, it's something you don't really hear much about anymore. But thank God, there's so many treatments for HIV now, and it is, more treatable and not as taboo to talk about it, and to, a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community are now able to be loud and proud. But I just really wanted to make sure that I included that because she spent so much of her life so committed to making sure that as many people were supported and loved, and had a virtual mom. The guy, one of the men who also worked with her, said that she became every gay man's mom during her time as what was the play during the time of the Torch Song trilogy, because she was a mom in that show, and she was just every gay man's mom is how he described her, and I absolutely love it. And I also love that on Golden Girls they also address those issues a lot. I don't think we ever see Sophia's son on the show, but in Golden Girls they talk a lot about, like, he's referenced a lot in the show. I think his name is Phil on the show. Like, she has a son named Phil, because yeah, Dorothy's brother, I'm pretty sure his name Phil, but they like reference him a lot as like cross-dressing and wearing Dorothy's clothes when they were younger, and like, you know being different. But I don't think we ever see him on the show, but they do address those issues on the show as well, which I think is obviously super important, especially back then. Now, like I said, it's, you're able to be more loud and proud. And of course, you know, communities who are different or shunned upon still have, a lot more ways to go. But back then, especially, it was like unheard of to, be so supportive in a lot of ways. And she just was. And it's just who she was. She was such a mom. Again, like, she was such a mom, so loving, so caring. And I just think the work that she did is incredible. But we have to talk about Golden Girls. So she got into the show. She actually got asked to audition, and the producers were very hesitant to cast her because she was 61, but they needed her to play Sophia, who was supposed to be 81. And Estelle Getty at 61 did not look as old as they needed her to look. But Hollywood, baby, they can make you look however you need to look, okay? Her managers, thank God her managers had the bright idea to dress her, to find the right clothes, which ended up being like Sophia's like costume, wardrobe, whatever. And obviously they got her the wigs and redid her makeup and got her that iconic purse that Sophia carries around. She goes everywhere with that little bag. They got her that bag and they sent her off to the audition, and the rest is history. As we know, she got the part. But she said when her managers like redid her entire look for that audition, she did not recognize herself when she looked in the mirror, because she had to look so much older than she really was. And I think, so many times in Hollywood we forget the magic behind all of these things that they make happen, because her and Dorothy were actually the same age in real life. Like, how insane. I think she was actually a year younger than B. Author, which is insane when you think about it, because she's playing our mom. And they were literally a year apart. I don't even think they were a year apart. Like, they were somewhere, it, they were not more than a year apart. I'll put it like that. Because I know that they had like 11 months between them, but they were like very much the same age, which is so funny when you like really think about how well Estelle Getty played B. Author's mother, and they were the same age. Like, that is show business, baby. That is acting, okay? That is acting. They do not make them like that anymore. But she ended up obviously getting the part. And what I found so interesting about her story, and what I really wanted to share, is that she was terrified going into that role. She had never done TV before. All of the other actresses in that show were pretty well known. They had all had experience in TV. They had all been established actresses for the most part. B. Author was huge after she did Maude. Her popularity was very significant because Maude was like such a huge hit TV show. Rue McClanahan was also on Maude with B. Author, and then she was also in a soap opera. So like Rue McClanahan had notoriety and experience in television, and then Betty White. My God, Betty White was on TV from the dawn of time. Like, I cannot even imagine the amount of like just what is it called? Like, in not intimidation that she felt, but she said she was, Estelle Getty describes it as being like, she was absolutely terrified. She was starstruck because, again, like, Betty White, I don't think y'all understand. She was on TV when TV first started. Like, I don't think there's anyone left from that era. There can't be, because she was literally on TV when they were still experimenting with TV. Go watch the video I did on Betty White. Like, there's just, it's like uncomprehendable to think about because we grew up with technology, but she was on TV from the time TV started. Like, that's insane. And lived for 800 years, you guys. Like, it's absolutely incredible. But I can't even imagine the amount of intimidation and like starstruckness that Estelle Getty had to have had. But she said it was awful. She said she was absolutely terrified. And again, she had never done TV before. And so she described that she used to have panic attacks, like regular panic attacks throughout the week, because TV was so hard for her. And of course, she had so much support, and all of the actresses knew how incredible she was and how much talent she had, so they were very supportive. But she really says how much of a struggle Golden Girls was for her, and she also had to go to therapy to get help, because she was so scared of being on that show. She was so intimidated. She had gone from doing theater where you're only performing in front of a few thousand people to performing in front of millions of people. And, it was such a big difference. It was so different for her. And then she's doing this in her 60s. And so you got to remember, like, for the last like 40 years and up until that point, she had done theater. And so it had to have been such a major transition for her, not just going from theater to TV and being starstruck by all these women and having the whole get used to being on set and being in front of a live audience and understanding the timing when it comes to taping a TV show is different from theater. And so not just having to get used to all of that, but also being in her 60s had to have been just a whirlwind of, like, so many feelings going on. So she does talk very openly, or did talk very openly, about going to therapy to help with her anxiety for being on the show. And then she ended up getting actually sick on the show. And so a lot of the episodes, she was actually experiencing memory loss while she was on the show. When I tell y'all, this woman had just been through everything you could possibly go through in, like, when trying to pursue her dreams. Okay, she of course became very successful on the show, but was just having such a hard time personally, or like mentally, health wise as well. So not only was she actually like experiencing so much anxiety and stage fright and stuff just in general, but then she actually started to have actual health problems. So she started to experience memory loss. And at the time, they did not have a word really for dementia. And she also started, developing a little bit of Parkinson's disease while she was on the show. And this part is so hard because her like other cast members and people who were working on the show just blamed her for, they said she wasn't studying hard enough, or like wasn't studying her lines hard enough. And she probably felt like she had no idea what was going on because, again, there was no word for dementia back then. The doctors were just like, probably were just telling her, like, you're just getting old. And this is someone who had decades of acting experience. And theater, having to memorize lines in theater, you become a professional when you do that for years and years and years. So she knew that she knew how to act and how to do her stuff, but she could not remember her lines for a good portion of that show. And she, talks about how it was so hard because everyone was saying that she just was not studying hard enough. I cannot even imagine how difficult that was, especially because, like I said, she already had so much of that performance anxiety going on the show. And she really just talked about, she was experiencing memory loss. And so a lot of the episodes, when there are scenes of Sophia eating raisins, she actually has her lines written on her hand, which I thought was like a really nice little fun fact. But, they really did their best to help support her during that time because no one knew what was going on. She herself didn't know what was going on. But, a lot of that show was really difficult for her because she was experiencing actual memory loss and was not diagnosed at all while she was on the show. It wasn't until years later that she did get diagnosed with dementia and Parkinson's disease, but while she was on the show, she was just being told often that she just was not studying hard enough, which I cannot imagine how awful that must have been. And for her to still put on such an incredible performance, like watching the show knowing that now is completely different because I'm like, wow, this is why I love doing this, because I love knowing what is going on behind the scenes. And I'm nosy, I guess. I like to know things, okay? But you never really know what people are going through. And that's really why I love studying people's lives, especially influential people who I admire, because there's always so much more going on than what we see on screens or the music we listen to, or, you never really know what someone is going through. And so I just love taking the time to learn about people's stories. But she did do Golden Girls. Obviously ended up being a hit. She does say that she actually liked filming, or at least Rue McClanahan felt that Estelle Getty did enjoy filming the Golden Palace more than Golden Girls because there was just less pressure. B. Author ended up leaving Golden Girls, which ended the show after 7 years. But Estelle Getty actually really liked Golden Palace, and I'm so glad she did because I actually love that show. I know people hate on that show. Obviously, it wasn't as good as Golden Girls, and a lot of people just like hated it because it was like Golden Girls just on a new set, and so it wasn't really like a new show. But I don't hate the show. I actually really liked Golden Palace. It was only on for like a season. I don't even, maybe 2 seasons. It wasn't on that long, but I liked it. But Estelle Getty did, experience a lot less pressure with that, and so I think she enjoyed. Well, at least Rue McClanahan felt that she really enjoyed that role a lot more. Also, when it came to her health, she was pretty open and honest in talking about how difficult it was, obviously after the show, just as she got older in life, how difficult it was to lose so much of her ability to function that late in life because she got everything later in life, and then in a little bit of a sense wasn't really able to enjoy it as much as she should have been because she, started being slower in walking and not being able to move as much, and she would drift off, when having conversations with people. And so she just started losing so much of her ability to function. And, in different documentaries and different interviews, she talks about how difficult that was and just how devastating it was. She says that her favorite thing in life was the sound of human laughter. And so for her to not be able to make people laugh and not be able to entertain the way that she really wanted to and was able to for so long just was so difficult for her. But she kept on pushing and just made the best of a really difficult situation and did her best to stay positive. But she was really open and honest in talking about how difficult that was for her. Before I wrap up, I did want to mention her marriage because I found this pretty interesting and kind of cool. her and her husband lived in 2 different states for most of their marriage. And so obviously while she was in New York City and in the plays and worked as a secretary and raising her kids and stuff, they lived together. But even during that time, she wasn't really around because she would go to the theater at night after spending all day at work. And so she talks about how, and her son actually talks about this too, and things that I've seen him in. He talks about how they were just on completely different schedules and they weren't really around each other much. And she was so much more nocturnal than her husband, but they never got divorced. And even when she went out to LA to film Golden Girls, he stayed in New York. Her husband stayed in New York. She lived out in LA. And she said when people would ask her what's the secret to such a long, happy, healthy marriage, she was like, how should I know? Because they were never around each other. But I think that was probably the secret. Like they were not around each other much. So I'm sure that they were together, they were very happy to see each other and it was fun. But like they didn't have, they weren't around each other much, and they both like had their own things going on. He owned a business. And so I just thought it was kind of cool. Again, for the time period, she was so cool and just so different and kind of like ahead of her time. She was supportive of LGBTQ plus. She was, a working mom. She just did so many things that were abnormal during that time. Huge, you know, support of raising AIDS awareness, and just found success later in life. Was on the biggest TV show in her 60s. Didn't even get her like biggest break until her 60s. So many things about her life are so cool and so different, and I just think she's so inspiring and she's so fun and just someone who I love, I admire. And although she's no longer with us, we will always have Sophia Petrillo. We will always have her on TV. That's the beautiful thing about TV and film and music and just different forms of art and books and authors and things like that, is that the artist always lives on because we always have their work. And I think it's so beautiful and it's so inspiring. And this is just your sign to not give up no matter what. If you have a dream that you're pursuing, just do whatever it takes to make it happen. Stick with it long enough. It might take decades, but when you really love to do something, make it happen no matter what. Do not stop. She talks about when she did want to give up, after over 20 years of being in theater, she didn't get her big break. She said, she stayed acting and in the theater because she loved being in that environment. She just loved being in the theater. She loved, being with her cast members, and she just loved acting. She stayed in it for the love of acting. And I think it's so beautiful when you find something that you really love and you're just so devoted to it that you're just going to do it no matter what. Whether it takes off or not, whether you make money from it or not, you're going to do it for the love of it. And I don't think that's something that we hear about a lot these days, is just doing things for the love of doing it. And find that thing that really makes you happy. Find that thing that you're super committed to, and do not give up on your dreams. Sophia Petrillo, Estelle Getty is such a role model when it comes to take a look in and keep on ticking. She went through everything. She had so many opportunities to give up. She went through grief when she lost, friends and family to the AIDS crisis. She, got super discouraged after working so long in theater and never getting discovered. Even when she finally did get discovered, she got sick, and she experienced so much anxiety being on the show. And then as she got older in life, she lost, a lot of her functioning and mobility and things like that. But she is just the true definition of take a licking and keep on ticking. She never gave up, and she just gave life all that she had. She gave her audience all that she had, and I just love her. I love her story so much. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Comment your favorite Golden Girl down below, and go check out my other videos on the channel. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already, and I will talk to you guys in my next one. Bye.